My friend and I decided we would explore this abandoned building at the top of this hill in our town. We had nothing better to do and decided it would be a nice little adventure for us. Everyone else in our town was too chicken to do it anyway. We made fun of any kids that would scurry past it or cover their eyes on the way to the other side of town. Today was a special day. We would document exactly what was in that house. It was sealed off, so it wasn't like we could just waltz in the front door. Our plan was to bring some things from the hardware store and some machetes to hack our way in. We would have to do this in the dead of night, of course, to be able to actually succeed without someone spotting us. We had an old camcorder that was stashed away in my dad's attic. Also, our phones for backup, and a tape recorder for anything that might go unnoticed by our ears. I met up with my friend near his house. He had his backpack and a bike ready to go for the trek up the hill. We nodded at each other in acknowledgement and silently headed towards the base of the hill. We biked towards the house, pedaling against the upward slope of the hill. We reached the top of the hill and looked down, peering down at the town below us. We stared at the house looming in front of us, then glanced at each other with inquisitive looks. "You ready for this?" I directed towards my friend. "As ready as I'll ever be," he said in response. I took a deep breath and let out a powerful exhale. "All right, man, let's do this," I uttered, while walking our bikes to the front door. We knocked on the door, half expecting a response. I closed my eyes and took another deep breath. I always struggled with anxiety and overthinking. I opened them and felt a hand shake my shoulder violently. I gasped and came to suddenly. I looked around quickly to see my friend chuckling and holding his stomach from laughter. I shoved him. "Quit messing around, dude. We gotta be serious." He sighed and said, "All right, bro. Let's go in." I could tell we were both nervous about it, but had different ways of dealing with it. He dealt with uncomfortable feelings through humor, and I was the type to hold it in until I felt like bursting. My way of dealing with things was a lot more unhealthy. We tried the front door to find it was locked. I wondered why after all this time, the door was locked like that. Definitely perplexing, but I motioned for my friend to follow me to the back to see if there was another way in. We crept towards the back while looking behind us. The feeling of paranoia was definitely there. After all, we were doing something we weren't supposed to be doing. We heard a ruffle in the leaves and got startled. My friend jumped, but I squinted my eyes to see if I could make out a figure of some kind. Suddenly, a black figure darted our way. Damn, maybe we were screwed after all. We flinched only to see it was a large raccoon. I sighed with relief. My friend chuckled and nudged me with his elbow. "Come on, man. What were you scared for?" I shoved him back and uttered, "You were just as scared," while shaking my head. Couldn't believe we got so worked up over a raccoon. We needed to be more level-headed if we were going to heading into this supposed haunted house. We twisted the knob to the back door, and it creaked open. I gritted my teeth and held my breath. I didn't know if there might be squatters, so we had to tread lightly. I also didn't want to alert any neighbors with our footsteps. This house was old and had wooden planks. It would for sure make noise as we traversed across them. We crept forward, scanning around. I turned on my flashlight and my friend followed suit. We moved our lights across the room, looking through the nooks and crannies. There was an upstairs also, but we decided to keep navigating the first floor. We saw old books littered across the floor. Some of the floorboards were broken with deep black emptiness beneath them. I avoided those and looked for more signs of anything. Any previous signs left by the owners before they left. We saw jars on the shelves with murky, viscous liquid. oddities such as a skull and weird figurines. I hope for our sake that the skull was fake. Why did they leave the house with stuff in it? It seemed as if they rushed out of here in a hurry, grabbing only the essentials. There was also trash on the floor, and strangely, marks that resembled claw marks. I poked my friend. "Yo, dude, look over there. What is that on the ground?" He looked and gulped. "I don't know, man. Let's just head upstairs." I looked up there and saw pitch black. I thought it was maybe better if we just checked the basement first, since it would probably have a light we could turn on. I don't know, man. Let's maybe check the basement first." I made a motion towards there with my head. He nodded silently, in agreement. As we approached the basement door, a cold chill ran down my spine. I felt the hairs on my arms raise. It felt insanely cold, but a different kind of cold, like a numbness from deep within. It was hard to describe. I took a deep breath, closed my eyes, and twisted the doorknob. It creaked open, and I stared down into the abyss, wide-eyed and curious. We glanced at each other and started heading down the steps. It was scarily quiet, but hey, what else could you expect? I fidgeted around on the wall for a light switch. It was so dark that I couldn't really make out where one would be. I finally found the switch and flicked it on. The light flickered as if so old that it was running out. It came on after a few sounds, and we looked around to see a rather unimportant basement. There was hardly anything here. Whoever was here before definitely did not utilize this at all. If they left things upstairs, then I figured they would have maybe left some here. Sighing, I turned to my friend, shook my head. He looked at me also disappointed and shrugged his shoulders. We were about to head back when I tripped on something. I almost face-planted before my friend grabbed me underneath the arms to stop me from doing so. I glanced down to see a handle sticking out from the concrete floor. I stared at it, bewildered. I couldn't comprehend why there would be a door on the floor. It had to lead somewhere. There was, however, a noticeable lock on it. Luckily, we were prepared for that. My friend fumbled around in his backpack and produced a pair of chain cutters. I took it in my hands and forcibly cut the metal chain. It clinked down to the floor, and I grabbed the handle. I grabbed it with both hands and grunted while pulling it towards, with brute force. It creaked open, and I peered into it. It was very dark and had a slight musty smell to it. I wrinkled my nose at the smell of it. There had to be some old-ass mold in here. Hopefully we didn't get sick from breathing it in. I covered my nostrils and noticed there were stairs leading down to Lord knows where. It looked like it continued for quite some time. I knew we had to go down there. I glanced in my friend's direction, who shook his head at the prospect of even trying to descend down the musky staircase. I grabbed his arm and yanked him towards the opening. "Don't chicken out now, man. We came here to discover something, right?" I stared him right in the face while saying that. He agreed with a regretful nod. We then started down. We had been heading down when we started to realize that something was very off here. The staircase kept twisting and turning and had been for a while now. It had been at least 10 minutes since we started going down. How was that possible? This was the deepest staircase I had ever seen, in a basement, especially of all places. How did it even fit in here? We both started to show signs of discomfort and fear. As we descended even further, the light from the hole at the entrance slowly disappeared. We were definitely in uncharted territory now. Going at a steady pace, we finally saw the steps beginning to come to and end. I sighed out of relief, so we weren't crazy. The steps actually did end at some point. This place was every for sure. It was covered in some sort of black goo. Very sticky. It was hard to get off once touched. It had a strange old dusty look to it, and it was a large room. I couldn't even really see the walls on either side. There was an open exit at the far end of the other side of the room. The door looked so tiny that I could barely make it out. How the hell did something like this exist underneath our town, and no had even discovered it? We started navigating across the empty room. As we did so, I could have sworn I heard creaks and bumps as if something was there, in the far reaches of the dark. I swiveled my head around constantly and felt like I could barely make shapes out. It probably was just my imagination, though. Your mind could do funny things in the dark. I shook off the notion that anything alive could even remotely be down here. Nothing could survive in these conditions. After what seemed like an hour, we finally reached the other side. We trudged through and saw the most baffling sight I think I've ever seen in my life. Pure white. The other side was pure white, as if absent of any matter or semblance of it. We looked back, and the door was still there, thankfully. Suddenly my friend sank down, and I mean fast. It was like he was falling through the floor, or whatever was beneath our feet. He reached out to me and screamed, "Help! I can't feel anything, please." He seemed terrified, and I scrambled to help him through my initial shock. I grabbed hold of his hand, but it was like he was being pulled down by an invisible force. Eventually, I could no longer hold on. I felt tears well up in my eyes, and I looked at him. He seemed void of all hope. He looked at me, and silent uttered, "It's all right. Let me go." I didn't want to. I couldn't. I wouldn't. I said to him, "No. You never leave a friend behind? It was my stupid idea to check this place out in the first place. Besides, who's going to be there to tell me my shoe's untied?" He said nothing. I nodded, and tears streamed down my face. I had to let him go, so I did. With that, he sank down, and his hand was the last thing to be seen, as it reached up as if grasping for the heavens. I sat back, baffled and befuddled. I couldn't make heads or tails of what just happened, neither any of the things that occurred during the whole night. I stood to my feet and silently walked towards the door. Walking back through the darkness, I heard low sounds as if there were being breathing. I could feel air on my neck as if seething was right behind me, breathing down my neck. I shivered and shuddered, but didn't dare turn around to even attempt to see what could be there, if anything. I finally reached back to the other side of the room from where we first entered. The dark part beyond that was calling to me. I had to make my journey across just to reach the stairs again. Once there, I peered into the room again. Something seemed very off about this room this time. The air was thicker. It had a dense fog, and I could barely see where I was going. As I flailed my arms around, trying to direct myself, I felt something tap my shoulder. I yelped. I stopped dead in my tracks, like a deer in headlights. I gulped, and my heart started racing. I stepped forward 1 foot at a time. I saw what looked like hands in front of me. When I say hands, I mean many hands. There were tons of them, dark, goopy hands stretching out all around me and grabbing at the air as if trying to grab a hold of something. I tried to dodge them, but some managed to snag my clothes. I damn near broke down. I couldn't comprehend any of this, and it all felt like some strange acid trip. Eventually, I broke free. I had almost no energy left. I had depleted it trying to fight against the arms. I ran up the stairs through sheer willpower and adrenaline. I reached the top, but ran smack into a brick wall. I scraped around and felt the wall in front of me. No way. This wasn't here before. The entrance was gone. It's as if it never existed. I looked back behind me and saw darkness begin to engulf the staircase. It was disappearing into nothingness. I saw it reach my feet, and the darkness began swallowing me. I saw it climb up my legs and travel up my chest, then spread to my arms. My arms became heavy and the same color and consistency of the goop. This was it, the end for me.